Dan Harden, thank you so much for that introduction. Real quick, I want everybody in the chat to give it up for Dan. He puts these events together. This is a labor of love for him. It's a community that is a member of. He is not just a marketer. He's actually been a recruiter. I had the opportunity to work with him at AWS. So when I think of somebody who is actually doing the hard work and doing the heavy lifting so that we rise as a community, it makes me excited to know that it's somebody who's been in the trenches and done the hard work with us. About the hard work today, hey, I'm Brian. We're going to talk about being under pressure and how to rocket modern recruiting. So for those of you about to rock, recruiting is a game, an infinite game, a game that we've all been victims of, we've all been victors of. We've gone through layoffs, we've gone through hiring freezes, we've had impossible requisition loads, we've had the demands to make 6 hires a month, 19 and 20 hires a quarter as a stretch goal. And now we have AI knocking at our door. And supposedly, as 88% of people in a recent Gartner study suggested, are using AI in recruiting. So it makes me wonder, as I'm cranking up the Angus Young and AC/DC here, if even seasoned recruiters, if the game has passed us by. And what I want to focus on today is I want to focus on four, count them four, core mechanics that whether AI comes today, tomorrow, next week, it's going to make us indispensable. And that's how we're going to rocket modern recruiting. So here's the problem. No, this is not a picture of me. I know you were confused by the hair. This is actually Vanilla Ice. Here's the problem. Yo, I want to solve it. As recruiters, we are people pleasers, right? We want to say yes to the hiring manager. We want to say yes to the candidate. And we have been confronted hundreds of thousands of times with well, when did you need to make this hire? I needed to make this hire yesterday, right? So, this is the problem. Check out the hook, which was originally laid down by Queen and our very talented friend, David Bowie, in Under Pressure. And we're going to rewrite this. We're going to go into the kickoff meeting where all great recruiting starts and takes place. This is not the takeout meeting. This is not the intake session. This is a kickoff meeting, right? As my friend Kelly at Olipop says, you want to energize your community of hiring managers to take ownership in what is being kicked off, as opposed to what commands they're simply barking or giving out. So how are we going to solve it? So we're going to do four core things. Dan alluded to one of these four core things, and that's curiosity. Great recruiters, they ask questions, they seek to understand. They're motivated intrinsically to ask deep questions about the roles, about the business impact, about how they're going to drive innovation in their organization. Now, look, I am a technical recruiter. I recruit technologists day in and day out. So you may be saying to yourself, but Brian, I recruit salespeople. Well, salespeople move the financial needle of the organization. Brian, I recruit accounting and finance. Without accounting and finance, there is no organization. There is no regulatory pillar that is going to stand. It's all going to fall down. Brian, I recruit attorneys. Okay, I'm not going to go there. You get the example. But it's that curiosity to understand their craft and to understand the division that is occurring in the market. And by division, I mean who is and who isn't in your talent pool. Then we got empathy. Recruiters, we got to be empathetic to our candidates. We got to understand they're coming from a difficult place. They're making a difficult decision, probably one that they're only going to make every 5 times in a lifetime, maybe 7 with the rounds of corporate layoffs that are going on. I don't want to be ignorant of that. But we also need to create a positive environment for our hiring managers. If you think about it, it's a safe space where they can come to us with their most intrinsic self-doubt and put things on the table so that we can really help them go above and beyond. We can help them go hockey stick. We can help them go retro rocket active, right? And then there's tenacity. Look, one of my favorite rock groups of all time has been tenacious in what they've done and what they've built, and we'll get to them in a second. I think you're picking up on the rock and roll theme here that I'm laying down. If my hair wasn't enough to suggest that we were going to rock right now, that's right. I'm Brian Fink, and I came to get down. is that tenacity is the energy to move past those impasses that are presented to us through the market, right? So this is how we're going to approach who we're going to seek out to solve these problems. It's going to be who we seek out when somebody tells us, no, I'm not interested. Well, do you know somebody who would? Right? Is this the only role that we have? Is there somebody on our team that could fill this role today? And then there's mischievousness. And mischievousness was not originally one of my core four identities. It was something that was really taught to me by Steve Levy, right? Is that recruiters must challenge the status quo. We cannot simply be that order taker. We have to consistently and meaningfully raise the bar. And so that's what we're going to do right now. So about curiosity, who better to talk about curiosity than U2, a band that still hasn't found what they're looking for, right? So when we think of curiosity, we think about doing market research, about doing market intelligence, being able to tell the hiring manager, hey, this is a role that you could hire for in New York City and people would come into the office 3 days a week. Or no, this is not a role that people would come in 3 days a week in Miami traffic, right? You've got to be able to ask questions about the EBITDA, how it's going to affect the bottom line. You've got to be able to ask questions about what they're trying to build and how this will move the needle and what the overall impact is on the business. Empathy, thumbs up high. Now, when I was going through the slide presentation with my daughter, she recognized everybody else up until this point. She had no idea this was Billy Joel, right? But Billy Joel is an empath, and we've got to feel that empathetic energy. We've got to raise the bar, as I talked about with mischievousness, but we've got to do it in a way that's not passive aggressive, that is moving with the same velocity and eagerness of the hiring manager. And then we got salt and pepper, and don't forget Spinderella, tenacity. When I think of tenacity, I think of women who had to raise the status quo in the rap game in the 80s when no one else was able to break through. And that's why I put up salt and pepper, is I want to encourage you to be tenacious. I want to encourage you to ask those deeper questions, to go 5 steps below or 5 steps deeper in the conversation that you're having with the hiring manager and the complete hiring team. And then there's mischievousness. Who better to talk about mischievous than the Beastie Boys, right? Beastie Boys, when I think of the Beastie Boys, I immediately think of 3 great recruiters, right? They were able to draw us in and not even have an album when they toured with Madonna. True fact, true story, y'all. But let's talk about taking those 4 constructs and driving them into the questions that we would ask in the hiring manager kickoff session. We got 99 problems. All right, look, I believe that there should never be a hire made if there's no problem to be solved. If there's no balance sheet to be balanced, don't hire an accountant. If there's no model to be trained, do not hire an AI engineer. So what is the problem this hire will solve? It's not what they will do. It is why this role exists. It's going deeper. It's showing that tenacity. And then it's showing that empathy. What happens if we don't fill this role in the next 60 days? You're putting it out there. You're making it a manifest, not manifesting. You're making it a manifest of what is going to be the urgency and the downstream impact if we don't hire this accountant, this salesperson, this AI engineer. And then there's a question that I don't think a lot of recruiters ask. It's about the money, okay? And I'm not talking about the money that we're going to get paid if we fill this role for an agency recruiter. And I'm not talking about the cash compensation that's attached to this role if you're an internal recruiter. How does this role make the business money or save the business money? If the person you are hiring for cannot answer this question, this role is not defined. This role is simply a pie in the sky. I've got head count and I want to fill it with somebody and I'm not really sure what they're going to do. In fact, if they don't know the answer to this question, they're setting that candidate up for long-term failure in the organization. Check it out, HBR. I'll post the link in a minute. HBR article from 2023 that talks about the division that occurs if you don't have a defined role, defined outcome, right? What about talent? All right, Flea's got plenty of talent, man. This is a guy who's like 60 plus years old, and he is rocking the bass all the time for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Promise I'm going somewhere with this, all right? Why would someone leave a good job to do this work here? I'm gonna be blunt with you. If the answer sucks, the candidate is going to ghost you. They're not going to be involved in the conversation. They're going to be ultra passive with you in the conversation about why they should leave. You have to make a compelling case to them and remind them about what is fueling them to take the conversation and what is attractive, what is pulling them towards the opportunity, not compelling them to run from an opportunity. All right. Which companies have talent we want? And which companies have talent we don't want? Now, look, I know that we all ask hiring managers, could you give me the 3 top companies that you'd like to pull an individual from? Maybe they've heard good things. Maybe they excel at systems design. Maybe. But also, maybe they suck, right? Maybe I don't want to hire anybody from a company that has a reputation of letting people hide out and rest and vest, right? So let's figure out where we're going to target and what markets we're going to go after. And then also do that competitive research. What are competing offers likely to look like? Is anybody going out to Glassdoor or to Reddit or doing research in Chat GPT or maybe firing up their Hire Easy account? I don't know. And dialing through and figuring out what people are being paid. And if when you say you want that top tier, that 1% talent, can you actually afford that talent? Are there trade offs that go along with that talent? What do those competing offers look like? Build a battle card, right? And then what is the message the hiring manager wants to convey about why this role matters to the candidate? This is your value proposition. Okay. This, for those of you who are marketers, this is your ICP, your individual customer profile. You want to make sure that this is tight, this is locked down, that you have a reason and a rationale as to why you're picking up the phone, calling that person, compelling them to leave a good job, that you know that they're underpaid, you know that they work at a top tier company, and you want to be able to articulate who, what, where, and why they should make a move, what that value proposition is. Yes, I still hold the phone like this as opposed to like this. Out the bar, Red Hot Chili Peppers again. I promise I'm going somewhere with this. What 3 signals will immediately disqualify a candidate? This saves times and wasted interviews, right? Because it's not like hiring managers have all the time in the world to coach us and to coach candidates on what they need to say. If the perfect hire doesn't exist, what are you going to compromise on? What are you, is it going to, taking all that market research, all that talent intelligence that you've done? Shout out to Erin Matthew. If you go to her page, you're going to learn a tremendous amount about talent intelligence that you never thought was possible. And you're going to be able to compete on speed, seniority, industry experience, comp, tech stack. You're going to be able to make the case to both the hiring manager and to the candidate about what they're looking for. And you'll be able to answer that question that the team at U2 brings up to us, right? And then what's more important? I ask this question all the time because I hire technologists. Someone who executes fast or someone who builds for scale. And I want to know why. Because I want to know if it's a product that can take a few months to get to market or if they're going to be shipping code on day 2. The producer. This is Rick Rubin. Everybody that you've seen in this presentation has worked with Rick Rubin, the same way that almost all the recruiters that are joining FRBR today have worked with or nominated or supported or attended classes taught by individuals who have learned a tremendous amount of value from each other and stand on each other's shoulders. The producer. Who owns each stage of the interview loop? You're setting the panel. You're making sure that there's no double kind of tackiness of people asking the same questions. You're not waiting around for who's going to interview who and what they're going to ask in terms of questions. You're parsing that out based on the different dimensions, different competencies that those individuals are going to hold and are going to have. And then what decision can be made in a single conversation and what requires a full panel, right? Are you making sure that you have paired interviewers so that you can reduce bias in the conversation and making sure that the candidate has a fair and equitable chance to be seen and heard? And then also, how fast will you give feedback? Align expectations. I call this recruiter homicide when a hiring manager takes more than a week to get back to you or the candidate to tell you, hey, I want to move forward with this person. They're working against you. You need to make sure that there is a cadence that is set up for when you're going to have hiring manager check-ins, when you're going to have interview feedback, and who's going to collect that feedback. And that is how you build the band. Now, I realize that there are a lot of questions that I did not answer about that were at the top of it, about how you overcome um, layoffs, how you overcome AI. I think that I really achieved something different by having a conversation about those four core variables that make for excellent recruiting. And I think that's how you build the band. So I want to thank you. I'm Brian. I'm available every Friday from 4 p.m. I mean, from 12 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern with my office hours. It's 15 to 30 minutes one-on-one. I'm not coaching for money. If you need help prepping for an interview, I'm here to help you do that. If you've got a tough search that you're working on, I'm here to help you with that. And quick short story. This is Run DMC. My first job as a recruiter was convincing them to play my fraternity house. So I echo Dan's question. What are you going to do that's going to be bold and make you stand out? Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. And thanks to the FRBR community. This has been an excellent event so far. Let's keep rocking and rolling with our next educator.